You're watching Story Scroll. Real stories, raw emotions, and endings you'll never forget. Let's scroll into today's tale.
Original post. Throwaway because some people from my old life still lurk on Reddit, and I'm not ready for this to be traced back to me yet. I'm writing this partly to vent, and partly because something happened recently that's cracked open a chapter of my life I thought was sealed forever. I grew up in what used to be a normal family. My mom died when I was young, and for a long time it was just me and my dad. When I was 15, my dad remarried. His new wife moved in with her daughter, who was a year younger than me. Overnight, our quiet house turned into a blended family. From day one, it was clear who mattered more. My stepsister, let's call her Lena, was treated like fragile glass. She was dramatic, emotional, and somehow always the victim. If she forgot homework, it was because she was overwhelmed. If she snapped at someone, it was because she was sensitive. Meanwhile, I was expected to be mature, understanding, and accommodating at all times. I tried. I really did. I told myself this was just growing pains, that if I kept my head down and stayed respectful, things would settle. But they never did. Lena had no concept of boundaries. She'd walk into my room without knocking, sit on my bed, comment on my body, my clothes, even my dating life. Sometimes she'd make jokes that made my skin crawl. Stuff like, if we weren't step-siblings, you'd totally be my type. I hated it. I told her to stop. I told my dad and stepmom. Their response was always the same. She's just affectionate. She doesn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. So I did what I always did. I backed off. I locked my door. I avoided being alone with her. I stayed late at school or at work. I thought if I minimized contact, there'd be no drama. I was wrong. About a year after they moved in, everything exploded in one night. I came home late from work. Lena was in the living room, crying. My stepmom was holding her, glaring at me like I was already guilty. My dad wouldn't even look at me. Before I could ask what was going on, my stepmom screamed, "How could you do that to her?" Apparently, Lena had accused me of assaulting her. There were no details, no timeline that made sense. Just sobbing, shaking, and words like I felt unsafe and I was scared. It was vague, but it didn't matter. The accusation alone was enough. I tried to speak. I swear I did. But every sentence was cut off. I didn't. Don't lie. Let her talk. You're disgusting. Someone called the police. I remember sitting on the couch, hands shaking, while Lena cried louder every time an officer asked a question. I wasn't arrested. There was no evidence, no marks, no consistent story, but the implication was clear. I was already convicted in my own home. That night, my dad told me to pack my things and leave. I asked how long. He said, just go. I wasn't allowed to take much. Just a backpack, my phone, wallet, and whatever I could grab in 5 minutes. The house I'd grown up in was suddenly off limits, like I was a stranger who'd broken in. By morning, the story had spread. My phone blew up with messages from relatives I hadn't talked to in years. Some told me I was sick. Others told me to stay away from the family. A few threatened me outright. No one asked what actually happened. Lena posted vague social media updates about surviving trauma. People praised her bravery. I lost friends within days. Some blocked me. Some sent me long messages saying they believed victims and couldn't be associated with me anymore. I was in college at the time, and the rumors reached campus fast. A professor quietly suggested I take time off until things settled. My part-time job stopped scheduling me. No explanation, just silence. Within a week, my parents cut contact completely. My dad sent one last message saying, "Don't try to reach us. We're doing what's best for the family." I guess I wasn't family anymore. For a while, I slept on a friend's couch, then another, then my car. When I felt like I was overstaying my welcome, I showered at gyms, ate cheap food, and tried to act normal while my entire life collapsed. The worst part wasn't even the homelessness or the money. It was the isolation. Being treated like a monster when you know you're innocent does something to your brain. I replayed every interaction I'd ever had with Lena, wondering how she could lie so easily, and how everyone else could believe her without hesitation. There were nights I genuinely thought about giving up, about disappearing completely. The only thing that stopped me was a stubborn thought that kept repeating in my head. If I die like this, they win. So I didn't. I rebuilt slowly, painfully. New city, new job, new people who knew nothing about my past. I learned how to survive without a safety net, without parents, without a last resort to fall back on. I haven't spoken to my dad, my stepmom, or Lena in 6 years. And then 3 days ago, I got a message. It was from a cousin I hadn't heard from since everything happened. The message was short, awkward, and ended with, "There's something you should probably know. Things are coming out." I don't know what that means yet, but for the first time in 6 years, it feels like the truth might finally have a voice. And I think it's finally coming out. Update 1. First, I didn't expect my original post to get the response it did. I've read every comment, supportive, skeptical, angry, all of it. I'm not here to convince anyone. I just needed to get my story out, because what's happening now feels unreal. A lot of people asked how I survived after being disowned, so I'll start there. The first 2 years after I was kicked out were pure survival mode. I worked whatever jobs I could get under the table, bounced between short-term rentals, and avoided anything that involved background checks or references. The accusation followed me like a shadow. Even when no one knew the details, I felt branded. Eventually, I moved cities again, far enough that my last name didn't ring bells. I went back to school part-time, picked a field where skills mattered more than connections, and kept my head down. It took years, but I built something stable. Today, I have a solid career, my own place, and a life that doesn't feel like it could collapse overnight. I'm engaged to someone who knows most of what happened, but not all of it. I've never told anyone the full story because saying the words out loud still makes my chest tighten. Being falsely accused does that to you. Even when you're proven innocent, your body never fully forgets. I thought that chapter was closed. Then I got the message I mentioned at the end of my post. It was from my cousin on my dad's side, the same one who called me a disgrace 6 years ago. The message was painfully polite, like she was talking to a stranger. She said she didn't know how to say this, but she thought I deserved to know. Apparently, Lena's life has been unraveling. She got married 2 years ago. From the outside, it looked perfect. Big wedding, smiling photos, supportive parents. But according to my cousin, the marriage has been a disaster. Lots of fighting, lots of misunderstandings. And recently, her husband moved out. At first, I didn't care. Karma happens to everyone eventually. But then my cousin dropped the real bomb. Lena's husband found out she'd been having an affair. When confronted, she panicked. And instead of admitting it, she accused him of inappropriate behavior. Not assault exactly, but enough to play the victim card again. This time, though, it didn't work. Her husband demanded proof. He talked to people. He found old inconsistencies. And eventually, Lena broke. According to what was relayed to me, she admitted privately that she had lied years ago, that she'd accused me to divert attention from her own behavior back then, that she knew my dad and stepmom would believe her without question, and that, yes, she wanted me gone because I made her uncomfortable just by existing. Hearing that made me physically sick. It gets worse. Once her husband started digging, more things surfaced. Old messages on her phone to a friend, bragging about how easy it was to manipulate my parents. A voice recording where she joked about ruining his life in one night. Apparently, she never thought anyone would hear it. That friend, no longer loyal, shared everything when things started blowing up. Within days, the story spread through the family like wildfire. The same people who had cut me off without a second thought suddenly realized they'd been lied to for 6 years. That's when my phone started ringing. First my stepmom. I didn't answer. Then my dad. I didn't answer that either. They left voicemails. Long ones. Emotional ones. Full of phrases like, "we didn't know," and "we did what we thought was right," and my personal favorite, "you have to understand, we were protecting the family." Protecting the family. Apparently, I was never included in that definition. I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. Part of me wanted to scream at them. Another part wanted to block every number and pretend none of this was happening. But the truth doesn't stay quiet forever. Lena's husband filed for divorce. He also shared the evidence with a lawyer. I don't know the legal specifics yet, but I do know that false accusations, even made privately, carry consequences when there's proof, especially when there's a recorded confession floating around. Extended family members started reaching out. Some apologized awkwardly. Some tried to justify their silence. A few asked if I could forgive and forget now that everything was out. What shocked me most wasn't that they were wrong about Lena. It was that none of them ever questioned her in the first place. Not once. My dad and stepmom finally managed to get a message through, asking to meet in person. They said they needed to explain, that they were devastated by what they'd learned, that they wanted to make things right. I reread those messages more times than I want to admit. For 6 years, I was dead to them. No verdades, no holidays, no are you alive texts. And now, suddenly, they wanted closure. I realized something important during that moment. They weren't reaching out because they believed me. They were reaching out because the lie had become inconvenient. After a lot of thinking and talking with my fiancé, who fully supports whatever I choose, I agreed to meet them, but only on my terms. Public place, clear boundaries, no minimizing, no excuses, no rewriting history. I told them one thing, and one thing only. I'm not coming to make you feel better. I'm coming to hear the truth. They agreed immediately. Too quickly, honestly. We're meeting soon. They still don't know what I plan to do next. Final update. This will be my last update. Not because things didn't happen after this, but because this is where my involvement ends. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between where I live now and where my parents still are. Neutral ground. Public. Exactly how I wanted it. My dad looked older than I remembered. Smaller. My stepmom wouldn't meet my eyes. And then there was Lena, my stepsister, sitting rigidly with her arms crossed, already crying before a single word was said. No one ordered coffee. For a few minutes, nobody spoke. The silence was thick, uncomfortable. Finally, my dad broke it. He said my name the way people do when they're hoping it still carries weight. We know we were wrong, he said. We just need to talk. I didn't respond. I looked at Lena instead. I told her calmly, say it. Not your version. The truth. She shook her head at first, sobbing harder. My stepmom tried to interrupt, saying this wasn't easy for her, that she was under a lot of stress. I shut that down immediately. No, I said. I waited 6 years. She could take 5 minutes. That's when Lena finally spoke. She admitted she lied. Not with excuses. Not with I didn't mean to go that far. She said it plainly. She said she accused me intentionally. She said she knew exactly what it would do to me. She said she panicked back then because she was cheating and I was an easy target, quiet, already isolated, and, in her words, disposable. She admitted she knew our parents would believe her without question. When she said that, my dad made a sound I'd never heard come out of him before. Something between a gasp and a broken laugh. My stepmom went pale. Truly pale. Like the ground had dropped out from under her. Lena kept going because once the dam broke, everything came out. She admitted she never expected consequences. She admitted she thought I'd move on somewhere else. She admitted she joked about it later because it felt like power. I didn't interrupt. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. When she finished, I finally spoke. I told them what those 6 years actually looked like. Not dramatically, just factually. I told them about sleeping in my car, about losing my education, about the job interviews that went nowhere because of whispers, about the friends who vanished overnight, about waking up every day with the knowledge that if I defended myself too loudly, I'd look guilty all over again. I told them about the panic attacks, about how long it took before I could stand being alone in a room with someone without feeling sick, about how even now, I flinch when someone says my name too sharply. I didn't accuse. I didn't insult. I just laid the damage on the table and let it sit there. My dad cried. Fully cried. My stepmom kept saying, we didn't know, over and over like repetition could change history. That's when I corrected her. You didn't want to know, I said. There's a difference. The fallout didn't stop at that table. Lena's confession and the evidence that already existed spread fast. Not because I dramatized it, but because I didn't stop it. I didn't protect anyone this time. I confirmed the truth when asked. That was it. Family members who once called me a monster now had to explain why they cut off an innocent person without a single question. Some apologized. Some went silent again. The family's reputation took a hit they couldn't spin away. People talk when the lie is exposed. Lena was cut off by most relatives. Her divorce finalized quickly. Friends distanced themselves. The same support she once enjoyed evaporated when it turned out she wasn't a victim, just convincing. My parents tried to shift into repair mode. They asked if we could go to therapy together. They asked if they could meet my fiancée. They asked what they could do to earn back a relationship. That was the moment I realized something important. They wanted reconciliation because they couldn't live with what they'd done, not because they had stood by me when it mattered. So I said no. I told them, you already chose. You chose 6 years ago, and you never checked if you were wrong. I don't hate you, but I don't owe you a place in my life anymore. My dad asked if that was really it. If we're just done, I told him the truth. Yes. After that, I blocked them. All of them. Parents. Lena. Anyone who tried to argue on their behalf. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it for peace. Here's where everyone ended up. Lena lives with the consequences of her own words. No one shields her now. No one rushes to defend her tears. My parents live with regret and the knowledge that they lost a son not because he did something unforgivable, but because they refused to ask a question. And me? I am okay. The truth didn't give me back the years I lost. It didn't erase the damage, but it gave me something I didn't have before. Validation without a but attached. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't guilty. They lost their son the moment they chose a lie over me. And this time, there's no appeal.
Thanks for watching Story Scroll. Hit that bell and stay tuned for the next story that will move your heart.